Tonight, 100 years on, the Anzac spirit lives. Record crowds honour our diggers. From Gallipoli to the Western Front. Honouring sacrifice and mateship in Brisbane and across Queensland. With tributes and traditions across the country. Buildings collapse beneath heavy hail as more superstorms strike Sydney. 2 saved, but the man dies trapped in a burning Warwick house.
Across Queensland, this is 7 News.
Good evening. Unprecedented crowds have paid their respects and remembered our servicemen and women who lost their lives for us. Kay McGrath is at Anzac Square tonight. Good evening to you, Kay, and it's been a solemn day but also uplifting.
Good evening, everyone. Rod, yes, 100 years after storming the beaches of Gallipoli, they were not forgotten. In fact, far from it. From that sacred sand in Turkey to the Western Front, the War Memorial in Canberra and in Queensland at Currumbin and Brisbane's Anzac Square. Veterans alongside relatives of the fallen and, encouragingly, so many young faces who hopefully will never know that awful theatre of war, yet still feel a responsibility to keep the eternal flame burning. And we'll have full coverage of those events right across Queensland soon. But today was all about Gallipoli, where it all began, as the sun rose 100 years ago.
It was a long march for the Anzac pilgrims, but unlike the Aussies 100 years ago, they knew what they were in for.
I think I'm just going to be sobbing ridiculously, but that's okay, because that's why we're here.
I think my emotions will burst out, because, you know, they were just so young.
Right throughout the night, reflective music and documentaries played on the big screens to create an appropriate mood for the dawn service. When the sun rose over the bay where the Anzacs landed exactly 100 years ago, every centimetre of grass and grandstand was taken for the service.
100 years ago today, the quiet stillness of dawn and the gentle sound of the waves of this beach gave way to the flash and roar of gunfire.
Prince Charles, watched by his son Prince Harry, read the letter of Aussie Benjamin Lean to his wife on the eve of the landing.
Dear, dear sweetheart, goodbye, goodbye.
Lean survived Gallipoli, but later was killed in France.
We remember his sacrifice and that of all those who served and suffered.
The Prime Minister said Gallipoli was a nation-defining moment.
But ordinary men did extraordinary things. They lived with death and dined with disease because that was where their duty lay. They became the founding heroes of modern Australia.
Mr Abbott laid a wreath with his New Zealand counterpart John Key, and Nikki Aldrett, the widow of a Gallipoli veteran, also paid her respects.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
After the service, the Prime Minister mingled with the crowd.
A lot of people have had a very cold night, but it's been a marvellous experience for everyone.
And those we spoke to said the service did our diggers proud.
It's a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Amazing to be here 100 years later and to sort of imagine what it was like for them to get out of the boats and to run up here.
It was a wonderful service. It was just beautiful.
Will you remember it forever?
Forever.
At Gallipoli, Nick McCallum, 7 News.
More than 2,000 Australians were killed or wounded in just 4 days during the Battle of Lone Pine. A memorial there is just underway. Mel Doyle reports. Melissa Doyle reporting. Well, back home now, and there were record numbers at dawn services across the state. 30,000 people were up early to pay tribute here in Brisbane, but the state's biggest ceremony was at Currumbin's Elephant Rock.
solemn and respectful. 50,000 people stand silent as the last post rings out at Currumbin's dawn service. As the sun rose, the crowd was united, remembering the men and women who were killed fighting for our freedom.
There's been some pretty sad moments this morning.
Veterans who've died in the past 12 months were laid to rest in a special way. Their ashes were paddled out on surf boats and scattered at sea. It was a particularly emotional morning at Tweed Heads. Surf lifesavers recreated the Gallipoli landing. It was an opportunity for 15,000 people to step into the boots of our diggers and imagine how it might have been 100 years ago.
It was sensational. If you could get the Anzac feeling from what they did today, you'll never get it. You'll never get it. I feel for the soldiers. Year after year, wherever the wars are, no one will want to go through that.
On the Gold Coast, Natasha Squarey, 7 News.
Well, delivering a message of thanks was at the heart of the Brisbane March. For 3 hours, the crowd of 50,000 people didn't stop clapping, undeterred by terror threats over the past fortnight. And on the Gold Coast, thousands of locals and tourists gathered together for the midday march down the beachfront. Reporter Kendall Gilding joins us now live from Surfers Paradise and tell us, how did they mark the occasion there, Kendall?
Kay, it was a moving tribute where ex-servicemen and women from New Zealand joined the Australians. A blue sky and beautiful beach conditions provided a stunning backdrop. Marchers assembled on the Esplanade and walked down through the heart of Surfers Paradise on Cavill Avenue.
Thanks, Kendall. Well, all across Queensland, towns and cities have gathered to remember the sons and daughters they sent to war 100 years ago. The centenary was a chance to remember a tradition of service and sacrifice that's continued ever since.
On the beach at Fraser Island, a solid but fading link to the horror of Gallipoli. Townsville's heritage of military service has always been strong. Its 3rd Brigade landed at Gallipoli with 4,000 men. It left with only 1/4 of them remaining.
We take pride in keeping their memories alive.
It's a tradition that has never waned.
We came and laid a wreath for our mate Did, who was killed 2 years ago.
Cotton Tree near Maroochydore was one of dozens of places along the coast where thousands of eyes watched the sun rise above the waves. Jeff Bruce, 7 News.
An extraordinary crowd braved a chilly 5 degrees to attend the dawn service at the Australian War Memorial this morning. 120,000 people, the equivalent of more than 1/3 of Canberra's population, gathered in the pre-dawn silence. Well, after the commemorations finished, veterans packed pubs and shared stories over a few drinks, remembering mates who couldn't be there and exercising the freedoms they fought for. Big day. And Rod, I'll be back with more soon on the Anzac Day commemorations from London to the fields of France.
Thanks, Kay. We'll see you then. On to other news now. And Sydney, still recovering from one monster storm, has been belted by a powerful supercell. Destructive hail, rain and winds brought more flooding and collapsed several warehouses.
After a brief respite from high winds and heavy rain, the state's been slammed by another damaging storm.
This time, 3 warehouses were badly damaged by gale force winds at Huntingwood, just across the M4 from Eastern Creek.
Also, a nursing home had its roof wrecked at Mount Druitt. And with that destruction came hail, bucket loads of it. Caused by a thunderstorm sweeping up from the Victorian border well into the upper Hunter Valley, hammering the Blue Mountains and leaving carpet of what looks like snow but is actually ice. Towns transformed into alpine villages. It moved so fast. This was Parramatta Stadium minutes before the Wanderers kick-off against Perth Glory, looking like a snowy English pitch. Then the NRL's turn, the Roosters versus Dragons at Allianz Stadium.
Hailstones starting to form.
A torrential downpour with hail that forced the game's suspension. This was Brabham Drive at Eastern Creek, traffic brought to a standstill. Here's what it looked and sounded like.
Heavy rain and hail has just started started to fall here on the M4 in Parramatta. People aren't taking any chances and are taking shelter under the bridge.
The city wasn't spared either. Just when the weather seemed on the mend, we've been smashed again. This is the Great Western Highway at Blackheath.
The storm eventually stretched all the way from Western Slopes to the eastern suburbs. This torrent of ice and water was at Double Bay. Kath Turner, 7 News.
To breaking news, and a violent brawl has broken out at a Rockhampton A-grade rugby union match late this afternoon. Players from the Brothers and Colts clubs were shaking hands when the punch-up began. Referees tried to break up the fight, but it restarted. Here, a player runs in and punches another from behind. He was then attacked by others and had his head stomped on. Officials will launch an investigation. Coming up, the controversial Gold Coast figure, the latest arrest in the Titans cocaine investigation. The desperate bid to reach a man in a burning Warwick home. What Brisbane's accused flag burner had to say after a night in the watch house. And a toddler dangles from a balcony. What happened next?
And it certainly was a beautiful day across the southeast today. Temperatures across most regions top 29. A little bit cooler for Redcliffe, 15 to 27 degrees tomorrow. A bit of a change on the way with wind. Details later in the bulletin.
A man aged in his 80s has died in a house fire at Warwick. The heat was so intense, firefighters' helmets melted as they desperately tried to save him. A man charged with burning an Australian flag in Anzac Square yesterday has been granted bail after facing court. 66-year-old Peter Delorio spent the night in the watch house after the incident. A magistrate agreed to free him on the condition he didn't go within 100 metres of any Anzac ceremony. A 14-year-old terror suspect has fronted a London court accused of urging a Melbourne teenager to carry out an Islamic State-inspired Anzac Day attack. A stranger has rescued a toddler dangling from a balcony in Singapore. The hero was repairing a nearby road when he heard the commotion. Still to come, tonight's weather with Paul Burt. A surfer fighting for life after a shark attack off South Australia. Australian officials called to a last-minute Jakarta meeting. What next for the Bali drug smugglers? And 46,000 Australians lost their lives here. Anzac Day on the Western Front. A surfer is fighting for his life after a shark attack off a remote South Australian beach. He lost his leg when he was mauled. Andrea Nicholas filed this report. Australian embassy officials in Indonesia have been called to a meeting about Jakarta's plans to execute Myuran Sukumaran and Andrew Chan. Every nation with citizens in line for execution has been summoned to the briefing. Foreign Minister Julie Bishop admits now she fears the worst for the Bali 9 pair. Returning now to our Anzac Day coverage, and Kay McGrath at the Shrine of Remembrance. Kay, the French town of Villers-Bretonneux always hosts one of the most moving services.
Well, Rod, nearly 300,000 Australians served on the Western Front during the First World War. 46,000 died there. So today, there were many Australians at the commemorations in France. In London, the Queen will lead the royal family in ceremonies across the UK to mark Anzac Day. Europe correspondent Hugh Whitfeld is there. Hugh Whitfeld reporting. And Rod, I'll be back later with a story of a baby born today on the Sunshine Coast with a quite remarkable Anzac connection.
Thanks, Kay. Soon, Gilly live from Suncorp Stadium with the last word on the Broncos' Anzac Day clash. But next, how an Australian doctor is recruiting extremists for Islamic State. Plus, why the patriarch of a notorious Gold Coast family was in court. And police raid neo-Nazis, what they found buried in a Birkdale backyard. A young Australian doctor has featured in an Islamic State propaganda video calling on other medical professionals to join him in Syria. The man, who introduces himself as Abu Yusuf, says he regrets not travelling sooner.
Please consider coming, please don't delay. Like I said, it's not equipment that we're lacking, it's truly just the staff.
The federal government has warned Australians involved in foreign conflict they could have their passports cancelled. Controversial Gold Coast identity Ken Lacey is facing drug charges relating to the same trafficking syndicate that embroiled the Titans. The father of jailed criminals Jade and Dion Lacey believes he's being unfairly targeted by police. 4 people have faced court after a stash of guns was found buried in the backyard of a home in Brisbane's east. Detectives also found drugs, outlaw bikie clothing and a Nazi flag in the house at Birkdale after identifying the property from a photo on a mobile phone. Looking ahead to Sunday night and the breakthrough investigation that will reveal for the first time the incredible untold story of Ivan Milat's secret victim. Well, that's tomorrow in Sunday night after My Kitchen Rules, but now it's time for sport. Here's Rowan.
Thanks, Rod. Hello, everyone. We'll hear from Gilly at Suncorp shortly before tonight's Broncos-Eels clash. Can they complete a Queensland NRL hat-trick as Sydney Storm creates havoc and history in the Anzac clash? And has the Fresh Prince of Tiger Town produced the try of the year? The Broncos round out the NRL's Anzac Day matches tonight against Parramatta. Sevens League expert Trevor Gilmeister's at Suncorp Stadium. Gilly, playing 5 games on Anzac Day has been well received and respected.
Oh, some people might say it's footy overload, but for me, dawn service this morning, back home with the family to have breakfast and watching the footy this afternoon. And the respect that I've been seeing from every game to the diggers past and present, I think has been fantastic.
We'll have to wait and see. Thank you, Gilly. The Titans have continued their resurgence under Neil Henry, making it 3 straight wins. While the Dragons-Roosters match was delayed by Sydney's severe storm, the Cowboys overcame injuries and the Knights in Newcastle.
At Allianz, the Dragons led the Roosters 10-0, but the real show was up above as lightning, hail and torrential rain forced the traditional Anzac rivals back in the sheds after 27 minutes.
Look at the hail, a skating rink forming at Allianz.
A half-hour delay gave staff time to sweep away the flood. Upon resumption, Sean Kenny Dow brought up his century.
Kenny Dow has scored 100.
Long-standing grudges between the Storm and Manly were placed on hold as the 2 rivals honoured the Anzacs. The Suns are looking for their first win of the season tonight against the Giants at Manuka Oval in Canberra. The Raw are talking up their finals momentum despite almost blowing victory against the Jets overnight. Brisbane claimed a 2-1 win in the end. And that's tonight's sport, Rod.
OK, thanks, Rowan. Fuelcast is next, then back to Kay at Anzac Square, plus the young Brisbane family with a special Anzac Day connection.
And it was such a fitting day for a special occasion, I can tell you now. We're in for a little bit of a change tomorrow. I'll have all the details in the weather after the break.
Today's main story is now a service is underway at Lone Pine after more than 10,000 people honoured the Anzacs at a dawn service in Gallipoli. There have been no major security incidents as Queenslanders mark the occasion with services and marches across the state. And a freak storm has caused major damage in Sydney, dumping heavy rain and hail. Warehouse roofs collapsed. Looking at Fuelcast now, the RACQ says hold off on filling up. The price of petrol isn't expected to drop until next week. Weather and all the coastal information now. Here's Paul.
Thank you for that, Rod. Good evening, everybody, from Surfers Paradise Beaches tonight. I tell you what, it certainly was a fitting day for such a beautiful occasion, and it was a very special dawn this morning, and it pretty much went through for the afternoon. Temperatures here on the Gold Coast, 22, 21 in the city. Let's take a look at what happened today. Most suburbs got up to around a top of 29 degrees. Gold Coast, Ipswich, Logan in the city. A little bit cooler at around Redcliffe with a top of only 27 degrees. Now, if we take a look at the satellite, it shows another low pressure system whipping its way across the southern states. Now, that will sit off the central coast of New South Wales tomorrow. It's not as intense as the one earlier in the week, but definitely enough to bring some foul weather and strong winds back to the coasts. Back home, we'll see a strong, cool westerly change tonight and tomorrow, bringing more blue skies for at least another 2 days. Capitals, a few showers for the southern majors, 12 to 21 for Sydney, 5 to 18 Canberra, 11 to 14 in Melbourne. Place to be will be in Perth, fine 11 to 26. North Queensland, blue skies and light winds, tops of 31 for Cairns, 32 Townsville, 18 to 29 in Mackay. And that blue sky trend will continue through the Capricornia and Wide Bay Burnett regions tomorrow, 29 for Rockhampton, 15 to 26 Bundaberg, 27 for Maryborough and 10 to 18 Toowoomba. In the southeast, strong offshore winds will bring cooler conditions back home, but plenty of sun. 15 to 26 on the Gold Coast, 16 to 24 for Redcliffe, 12 to 24 Ipswich, 14 to 24 for Logan. Suburbs, a gorgeous Sunday is in store. Blue skies and 15 to 24 for Chermside. Bit cooler, Sandgate, 16 to 23, 24 for Oxley on the water. Strong winds, basically the further go out, the rougher it'll be. In the city, sunny, 24, down to 15 tonight. Ahead, sunshine won't last. We're expecting showers Wednesday onwards, highs of 25. Back to Ipswich now, sunny Monday, 10 to 25. You're going to get really cool Tuesday morning, down to 8, top of 25. Showers increasing Wednesday, Thursday. And on the Gold Coast, sunny Monday, 13 to 25, late shower Tuesday, 14 to 25, increasing late Wednesday through to Thursday and Friday before breaking on Saturday, and 26 degrees. If you're heading outside tomorrow, let's take a look at the waterways and see what's happening.
Thanks, Paul. Well, I've been joining you from Anzac Square tonight, where so many people came to commemorate the centenary of Gallipoli, but not the Dillman family, who marked it in a different way on the Sunshine Coast. And a lovely way to end our broadcast tonight, Rod, on such a positive note, on such an historic day. Back to you.
Thank you, Kay. And that's all from us this Anzac Day. Thanks for joining us. For now, from all the team, a very good night.